Dedicated to geeks and nerds, you're listening to Project I Radio, 24/7 Nerdgasm.
Bizzong.
Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
This is Bizzong, the Bizarre Weird Fiction Podcast, with me, your host, Mr. Farang. Zongers, you beautiful people, you're here because you're fans of Bizarro and weird fiction in general. So this week, I want to tackle things from a slightly different angle. It's been going on in my head. You know, out there, we've got the super fans, what I call them, of Bizarro. So I wanted to interview some of these super fans of Bizarro, and the opportunity presented itself this week in one Mr. Russell Holbrook. Now, you may or may not recognize the name, but when I tell you what he does, you're more than likely gonna recognize his M.O. If anybody takes part in the Bizarro fiction groups on Facebook, you have surely seen pictures of Russell Holbrook putting up quotes from various Bizarro writers on a store in Georgia called the Book House. And he has a little sign out there. You can put up those letters and form words. And what he does is he forms words from the Bizarro writers out there, puts their quotes up in lights for everybody to consume. And then inside his store, he's actually created a special Bizarro end cap to focus on and spotlight Bizarro fiction. So I wanted to talk about that. Those people going out there because they love the genre and they're doing so much extra for it. You know, they're not just reading it. They love it so much they want to go out and they want to shout from the mountaintops, read Bizarro. And that's what Russell Holbrook is doing. And then he popped a little extra surprise on us just recently by releasing his first book called Joy. I could think of no other excuse to have Russell Holbrook on the podcast after he came out with that. So, we're going to sit down with Russell. We're going to talk about what he's doing down there in Georgia to promote the genre, to promote the writers, and to promote himself and his new book. So, Zongers, without further ado, please welcome this week to Bizzong, Russell Holbrook. I'd like to welcome to Bizzong this week the one and only, you've probably heard of him and you just don't know it. The man is a super fan and he's just jumped in to the writing realms. I'd like to welcome this week to Bizzong the one and only Russell Holbrook. Russell, welcome to Bizzong.
Hey Frank, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here because I love your show, man.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. You know, it's I've been going around in my head. There's a bunch of Bizarro, what I call super fans out there, of which you're one of them, and I think you guys really need to be spotlighted almost as much, if not as much, as the Bizarro writers themselves, because you're waving the flag for the genre in a big way, and a genre that doesn't get a lot of flag waving, shall we say. And you're the guy that came to mind. Like, I'm like, if I'm gonna interview some of these super fans, like, you're the guy because you work at a bookstore that actually a small bookstore, independent bookstore that, I mean, you're out there, you're putting the pictures up every week, you're waving the flag for Bizarro. So let's talk. It's called the Book House, right?
Yes.
Do you own the Book House?
No, I don't. It's an independently owned store that's been in the community since 1979. And the current owner, her name is Pam. I think she's the fourth owner. But it started out as just a small paperback trade, like a book trade, and it's grown from there. And I started working there in 2009. So I was hanging out there all the time, and I was involved, you know, with friends with everyone. And then I just kept asking her for a job, and then months went by, and one day she was like, "Oh, I'm looking for someone if you're still interested." And So then I started then, and then I worked part time, and then I think I was gone from. I took about a year and a half off because I worked at this warehouse and worked second shift, and the schedules were just too conflicting. And so then I left the warehouse and was thankfully able to go back to the book house. So that was about a year ago.
That's cool. Now, I should probably step back a little bit from my line of questioning, and we'll circle back to the book house. So
Okay.
let's start out with, how did you come to Bizzaro? How did you discover Bizzaro?
Oh, actually, it was in 2013. I was just looking for some new horror to read, and I wanted to read something that was just like really nasty and really out there. And I couldn't find anything like at the local bookstores, and so I finally turned to the internet, and I just Googled like splatterpunk, and ended up somehow at the Bizzaro Pulp Press website, and I was like, "What is this, man?" And so I found a book on there called Cannibal Fat Camp, and I ordered it, and that was, I think we were going on a mini vacation for Easter weekend or something, and I took it with me to the beach, and I read the whole thing in like the weekend, and I couldn't believe it, and so I was kind of obsessed from then on, and just was, right after that I found out about Eraserhead and BizarroCon, and yeah, so that was it. It just like grew from there. Oh, but before I read Cannibal Fat Camp, I remember reading some excerpts, like the very, very first Bizzaro thing ever that I even read one line from was from Die, You Donut Bastards by Cameron Pierce. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had no idea, and immediately like felt a connection with the writing and just the whole aesthetic of it, and the point of view, and I guess you could say the underlying philosophy behind the writing. And so yeah, it just like really hit me in the heart, and I was like, shit, I love this. And so that was it.
That's awesome. You come in on a point, like I was already on Bizzaro, but like I know the point where you come in. That's pretty cool to sort of put a thumbtack on the map of where you showed up. When you discover it, are you working at the book house?
Oh man, I believe at that point, yeah, that was when I was already doing the second shift at the warehouse. Like initially, I worked at the warehouse and at the book house, and then I just couldn't take those early mornings anymore. Like having to be there at 5:30 in the morning, just like basically turned me into a zombie. So I was working there in the morning, and then working in the book house in the evening, and then I went to second shift and worked at the book house in the morning, and then at the warehouse in the evening, and then I just like cut it down to one job. And so no, at that time I wasn't, and I only had one friend at the warehouse who was a big time reader, and she was more into like paranormal type stuff and dark fantasy. And so I was like, "Have you ever heard of this Bizzaro shit?" And she had, and I would tell my friends about it, and they were like, "Oh, that sounds completely crazy." But yeah, did I go off on a tangent?
No, it's fine. So like, you go back to the book house. You start back at the book house, and you got this Bizzaro thing that you're like totally excited about. How did you approach, or did you even have to approach the owners about putting Bizzaro on the shelves?
It happened when I read about Kirk Cameron and the Crocodile of Chaos Magic, because I felt like it would be good to approach one of us from a business standpoint. And I just said, this book is really hot right now, and I think we should have it in the store. And there's this whole like burgeoning genre that's just really coming up right now. And I was like, I'm really excited about this, and I think that we can be the only store in town, probably in the whole city, that has it on the shelves, and I think it would be really unique, and it would be good to have a physical presence because it's mostly, it's an underground movement that's mostly taking place online, and so that was like my end game, whatever you call it. That was my angle, and so I just like talked to her about it for a good month probably, and then we sat down together and ordered a handful of books. And then, they came in and we made the little display, the end cap display, and it's been there ever since.
That's all. Did you meet any resistance whatsoever, hesitation from the owner, given, the way some Bizarro titles are?
No, I didn't actually. And in fact, like her first exposure to it was when I ordered my own copy of Die You Donut Bastards. And I had ordered that and Ape Shit and Clusterfuck through the distributor Baker and Taylor, and she was like, "This donut book looks like some fucked up diet book," and like she thought it was amusing, and so there wasn't. She's very open minded, She's really into, alternative spirituality and things of that nature and philosophy. And so it wasn't much of a leap for her, and she's like a lifelong reader, and so she's very open to Bizarro and to having it in the store.
That's fantastic. I mean, just, you're down there. In what town in Georgia are you at?
We're in Mableton, which basically backs up to the west end of Atlanta, basically on the northwest corner, and yeah, it's your basic southern church on every corner town. I mean, like my wife and I are vegans, and we always joke about how the town is so meat-tastic. So it's your basic like Bible thumping southern town. There's a church across the street from our neighborhood, and every year they put up the little white crosses and say like many babies killed this year from abortion, and things of that nature. And there's like a wing shack on every corner, but so
it's America, baby.
That's right, man, America.
How's Bizarro being taken, from the reader's standpoint of view? That you moving books on the shelves?
It's slow but steady, and like I feel it's really important to just keep a positive mindset about it. And like I just watch who comes into the store, and if I see them near the comic section, which is right next to the Bizarro section, I'll hop over and say, "Hey, have you checked out Bizarro?" Or if they're wearing something, if they just look kind of like out of the ordinary, I guess you would say. I mean, or if they're wearing a metal T-shirt or like a shirt from a punk band or something, anyone who is not carrying like a stack of romance novels or something, or like one day I saw this lady looking at the Bizarro section though, and her kids were right there at her feet, and she was holding a copy of The Doom Hippies by Alex Johnson, and then she just had this like curious look on her face, and she set it back down, and then walked away. But it's like the people who give it a try like seem to like really enjoy it. I remember like this one lady like bought the. I think it was either Humans Under the Bed it was the Humans Under the Bed, the Kevin Strange book. She got that, and then she came back and like got some other stuff. And there's this one guy recently had been reading about Bizarro online, and then saw our Facebook page, and then came into the store and bought like a Jeff O'Brien and a Matthew Vaughn. And I can't remember the third one. He bought like 3 books like in the same day, so that was really awesome. And then on Easter Sunday, this dude who was like stopping in because he was early for his family gathering and wanted something to read, he bought like 3 Bizarro or 4 Bizarro books he had never heard of the genre, but he was a Troma fan and he really loved the titles of the books. And so, like, cool little stuff like that keeps happening, like, every now and then. And, you know, a lot of it seems to sell just because of the artwork. And then, you know, we have our little sign on the computer. It says, "Ask us about Bizarro." And, like, I feel like if we show enthusiasm for the genre, then, like, it rubs off on people. And my coworkers have also started reading, like, they've been passing the Cannibals of Candyland back and forth, you know, over the last week or so, which I think is really cool.
That's fantastic. Have you had that? Have you had that one customer come in yet that you convinced them to buy one, and they came back in the store like, "This shit is great. You got to show me more. Get me more." Did you get that one like just totally turned on by it? Come back looking for more, demanding more?
Yeah, it's the one guy from last week. I can't remember the dude's name, but I do remember it, but I don't know if I should. Like, if I should say it or not, if it matters, but, like, he's been the closest to having that reaction, you know, because he was already into weird fiction before, and now he's, like, pumped about Bizarro, because it's like, you know, I think Bizarro goes a step further than weird fiction, but, like, nobody has been like, "Oh my god, this fucking rules, man!" Like, we haven't had that person yet, unfortunately.
Hopefully they're coming. We got to get them in the door. Get them out of church. Get them in the door.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned the sign before. You got the sign outside the store, the billboard, as you are, and you. This is the part I love the most and really grabbed me is you've been putting up quotes from various Bizarro writers out there up on the board. How did that start?
It was just like a random idea. I was reading Rock and Roll Head Case by Lee Widener, and there was just a quote near the end, this one little section, and I just thought, well, that's like really cool. I'd love to put that on the board. And for years, you know, we've been putting metaphysical type inspirational quotes up there, and I just thought it was like so perfect because it was like in line with what we'd been doing like all along. And so I asked if I could put it up there, and she said yes, and then so I've been able to do it ever since.
That's great.
So,
and you get that billboard like weekly?
Yeah, weekly or bi-weekly. It just like depends on it. Like if, you know, if something might come up where I don't get to change the sign, or maybe like there's a terrible storm that day, but usually try to change it every Friday.
And have you had anybody come in off the street and like, you know, have something to say about anything up there on the board, Bizarro related?
No, not that I can remember. That would be cool though. Like, hey, I saw that quote. Like, you know, who's that by, or do you have something by that author? You know? Yeah.
Let's hope that all comes. But like, just the way you stump for Bizarro is just totally inspirational. Has any of the big names in Bizarro like approached you and thanked you or asked you about what you're doing or anything to that nature?
Oh, well, like people have thanked me, and I'm very grateful for that. It's really cool. But yeah, like everyone that I've quoted on there, they've been like, "Dude, that's cool, thank you," you know, and so yeah.
It's been you've been getting notice from the community clearly for what you're doing down there. How about the books themselves on the shelves? Do you just get the writers sending them down to you, or do you got to get those through like regular distribution channels?
Well, my boss prefers to get them through the regular distribution channels, which obviously takes a bit longer. But she likes going that way. I mean, going by that route. But a lot like some authors have sent us books as well on their own dime, which is really, really cool. And, you know, just to like get the word out. And I've also been able to just purchase books from the author, which I like to do. I'd prefer to. Well, I don't know which way is better. Whatever works out for the author is. I'm cool with whatever works. But so all of that, yes.
Is it? Do you find you can get a good selection through the distribution channels of Bizarro?
Actually, yeah. The only drawback is, it's print on demand, so it just takes a little longer. But yeah, the selection is great. Like they have, like our distributor has all the Eraserhead stuff and all the Bizarro Cult Press stuff and all the Strange House and Rooster Republic and New King.
Let's switch up to more about like what you in particular you like about Bizarro. Who are the writers out there that you're really excited about?
Oh man, I love Stevie Hunt, Christoph Paul, Jeff O'Brien, and Matthew Vaughn, and of course Carlton Mellick the third, and yeah, man. And I really love Anderson Prutney. Like his book Satanic Summer. Oh my God, I love that book so much. I don't know what happened, but that really I read Ritualistic Human Sacrifice, and then right after that I read Satanic Summer, and both of those affected me profoundly from an artistic standpoint, and also just as I was just blown away how there was emotional depth, and I've also experienced that before when I read Rich Poor Bastards, Rich Fucks by John Bruni. Yeah. I thought that book was really affecting, emotionally affecting, and but yeah, those I think that every Bizarro book to me is a special experience. Reading Slaughtertown Circus by K.M. Teep, that was really early on. I think that was the second Bizarro book I read, and that I loved that. But and I loved Vampire Guts in Nuketown by Kevin Strange, and I read that. I was like, damn, that was really something. And then just every I wish I had a list in front of me of all the books I've read. I don't want to leave anyone out, but those the writers I listed, those are who I'm really into right now. And I would especially say, I'm really into Jeff O'Brien's stuff right now. His stuff is so killer, and I want to read all of his books. So.
Cool. Yeah, Jeff O'Brien, early guest on this podcast. I've read some of his stuff. He comes off. It's been a while since I read him, but I read some really early stuff from him, and it comes off campy. You know what I mean? It's kind of real gritty, real campy. But I mean, that's what I love about it. It's you mentioned before a Troma fan. It's very Troma. It's very homegrown, gritty, raw. And that's the great thing about Jeff O'Brien. I got to pick up more of his newer stuff because he has to have grown. He's been, constantly writing and putting stuff out, and I just haven't read something newer from him to see how he's advanced.
Yeah, we're actually reading The Halloween Girl for our book club. We have a horror Bizarro book club at the book house now, and that's one of the selections, so I'm pretty stoked about that. But it's not for a while, so I gotta read something else before then, But I just read the Splatterhouse Rules, and that was crazy.
Yeah, how many people you got in that reading group there, the Bizarre reading group at the store?
There's only 8 of us right now, but hopefully it will grow. Well, I don't know if it needs to grow, as long as all of us who are in it are really into it. So I'm totally
intrigued by reading groups because I don't get it. And to me, like you say, 8 people, no big deal. To me, 8 people sitting around talking about a book, that seems like a pretty a pretty healthy sized group actually, for all talking around the same book at the same time. How does that work? What do you do with that? I've always been intrigued, but I've never sat in on one.
Oh, I didn't know how to do it, so I just copied my friend Jenny. She co-leads the paranormal romance book club, and so she just, to prevent the conversation from completely devolving into like bullshit, she made the system where you kind of say like you talk about specifics, and so we just adapted that to ours. So it's like, on a scale of 1 to 5, it's kind of corny to use numbers, but it's really helpful to like what was, the scares, the gore, the sex, and then overall, like, was the book scary or funny or whatever. And so you just like go around, we just like take turns going around and like talking about it, and then we end up like going back and forth and just discussing what we liked and didn't like about the book or certain characters or the story. And I think it's so fun. Like, I go to the paranormal romance book club just to sit there and listen, because I really enjoy listening to people talk about books. And like, I think it's awesome to get all nerdy and just like talk about that shit.
I've always wanted to just sit in on one, because I mean, like you, I just love to sit and talk books, and to be able to sit and talk bizarro books and focus in on stuff. I mean, shit, that's practically what I'm doing right here. But to be able to do it with a group and really sit there and, I mean, do you sit there and really pick apart the book? Do you get into places? Do you like, oh man, what was your reaction with this part? Or man, that shit didn't seem right. How did everybody else react to it? Is it that type of thing?
Yeah, but yeah, it is, and it's not like hypercritical though, because all of us just love to read, and we pretty much have a group consensus that like the best books are the ones that you enjoy the most. So it's not like we're a bunch of like uptight scholars like sitting around taking shit apart.
No, and you shouldn't be. But it's still fun to like just tear into a book and dissect it up some, and like, man, to be able to sit and talk with a group of 8 people about something like ritualistic human sacrifice or I Will Rot Without You, that would be like orgasmic for me. Like, I would really enjoy the shit out of that.
Yeah, dude, you should totally do it. I mean, you can always form your own group, and like, it is pretty awesome. Like, we haven't gotten as much into the bizarre side of things yet. Like, we're reading like Hell House by Richard Matheson right now, which I'd always heard about, but I'm really enjoying it actually. It's really cool.
Definitely. That's something, man, I wish I had time for all that kind of shit. And I wish, see, up here for me, the bookstore scene, if it ain't a Barnes and Noble, there just ain't a bookstore around here like you got down there with the Book House. Are there a decent, a healthy amount of indie bookstores in the area, in the region? Or is it kind of like, yeah, there are, huh?
Yeah, we're really, really fortunate. I mean, see, there's one here. We have the Book House, then 20 minutes away is Douglasville Books, and then in the other direction, about 15 minutes from us, there's the Bookworm in Smyrna, which is this. No, the Bookworm is in Powder Springs, and the Book Stop is in Smyrna, and so those are all in like 20 to 30 minutes away from one another, and they're all small, independently owned shops. There's a Barnes and Noble. It's about half an hour away, and then in Atlanta, in Decatur, there's a Little Shop of Stories, which is an awesome bookstore. It's mainly kids' books, but it's really cool. And there's like Atlanta Vintage Books. There's this like chain called the Book Nook, which is all used records, CDs, DVDs, and Blu-ray and books, and it's massive. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, there's a bunch. There's even this new store called Covers, which is down in it's near Midtown, I think, and they just carry. It's like a book boutique of like weird shit and just like odd books, and it's like set up like a clothing shop. It's really neat. Oh, and there's acapella books too. Gotta mention them. They've been in the city for like years. I don't even know how long, but that's a wonderful independent bookstore.
I'm always so envious. You see, like, out in Portland with Pal Books, and I'm sure they got a healthy amount of indies, and even St. Louis, it seems like there's a real healthy amount of independent bookstores. And now you're talking like, man, you got tons of bookstores indie down there, and I would kill for that kind of a scene in and around New Jersey. And I'm sure if I wandered into like New York City, I could do that, but it costs like $6,000 to travel into New York City any longer. So, man, if you ever wanted a franchise up here to the Northeast, I'm willing to point out some fucking key locations for you.
Oh, cool. Well, that's funny that you say that because my boss has said before that she would like to franchise, but I don't know, the details regarding that. But
Yeah. There also might be something to the fact of, why bookstores of independent nature don't work around here, too. Who knows? I don't know that much about the business to really have an answer for why it's so desolate around here. I couldn't even tell you. And I hate walking into Barnes & Noble because it's like I don't need any pots and pans this week, so I don't want to go to Barnes & Noble. It's very frustrating.
Oh, man.
So, now that I'm depressed myself, let's move on. Because not only are you a big fan, a super fan of Bizarre, and you're doing more than your fair share to promote the work, you're also now writing Bizarro, right? And you've just come out with your first book called Joy, which I was delighted to see because I'm like, wow, here's Russell. I thought he was just a fan, but man, he's writing his stuff too. Have you always been a writer, or has Bizarro influenced you to pick up the pen and start writing?
I've been writing since the second grade, and I love the arts, and I write and paint and like write music, and so what happened was I was really into writing, and when I went to college, I was in this course of study called the Great Books course, and it's a track of study where it's predominantly literature oriented, and you study like Greek literature and all the way and work your way up. And then I was in AP English in high school, and I love this shit, and so I was in a band, and we got signed my first year in college, and then we toured and all that, and and I like got into like drugs and drinking really heavy, and then the band broke up, and then I like drifted for years, and then I finally got into recovery in 2007, and then I really started writing again, and I had developed like a really intense interest in film and in filmmaking, and so when you're really like wasted all the time, it's hard to focus on stuff. But then I was hyper focused when so I hope I'm making sense. I feel kind of scattered, but so I started with the films, and I was writing those, and then I think it was 2011, I was going to write a new script, and I had already done 10 shorts and worked on a documentary for a little while that I never finished. And then so I was like, I want to write something new, and it was 2011. I got that idea when I was working at this haunted house, and so I started to write the script, and then I was like, man, do I really want to go through all that, like having to gather up all my friends together and the equipment and the props and this to like shoot another like short film. And then I just like had the idea that I should write it as a book, and so I did. And I started it in 2012, and then I went, like it was really sporadic. But I had written a lot of scripts, and like I'd always been writing my whole life, and there had been stops and starts on different writing projects. But then I was really committed to this, and so I think I finished the first draft over like a year or something, and then I rewrote it a bunch of times, and it went from being like 48,000 words down to like 20 something thousand, and then I just like had to stop, and I was like, all right, it's finished. And 'cause my wife was like, are you just gonna work on that forever, or are you ever gonna like actually release it? And I just realized I was like terrified to like actually put it out, but then you know through her encouragement, and then I just like finally did. But yeah, I've always loved writing. I think it was my first love, and I think that I mean I'm glad I experimented with the other arts, and like I had a great time playing music and touring and stuff. But I don't know. I may have. I wish now that I had stayed in college and instead of dropping out to go on tour and thinking, oh, I'm gonna be a rock star, woo! But like I think that if I had stayed on track and hadn't gotten so into booze and everything, I may have like graduated with an English degree, which maybe I'll still do. But yeah, I love it, and I've always loved reading, and I've always loved horror and like weird shit. So Bizarro is just, I feel like it's such a blessing that I came to Bizarro, and it's like exactly where I need to be.
That's fantastic. And that book that you're writing forever, is that Joy? Is that the book you just released?
Yes.
What's that? It's so new. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Can you tell us what Joy is about exactly?
It's about a married couple, and the wife, her name is Joy, and she has I guess you could call it a medical condition, but it's called premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is actually a real thing. And I read a story about a woman in England who has PMDD, and she was in a PMS rage, and she killed her boyfriend. She just murdered him and was acquitted because it's an actual condition where you can like go into fits of violence and rage, and it's like it's totally not fun, And so that's what it's about. She has PMDD, and she's had it with Western medicine, so she goes to see a naturopath, and it turns out that he's actually a very old witch doctor, and he wants to use her to unleash a demon goddess, or actually for her to like be the reincarnation of the demon goddess. And so he gives her these supplements that give her like superpowers, and he gives her a magical axe, and so if she kills a certain amount of people, it'll activate this power, and the demon goddess will come and inhabit her body, and she'll be the reincarnated demon goddess who's called the Mother, and that's what it's about. And then it turns out that she's also like really mad at her husband, and so like he becomes her target, and they have like a showdown, I guess. But some more stuff happens too.
It sounds pretty wild, that's for sure. Now you've published this under Riot Forge, right?
Yes, yeah.
The unconventional writers collective, Riot Forge. We discussed them briefly when we had Don Noble of Rooster Republic on. What was your experience publishing through Riot Forge?
Oh, it's been awesome. Those guys are awesome. They're so cool. And so helpful and encouraging, and a lot of people have helped me out with this, and even people outside of Riot Forge, and so but those guys are super cool, and everyone just like cheers one another on, and which I love. It's not competitive. It's not like, oh, my book is going to be better than yours, or it's like everyone helps each other out. It's really cool. So it's been a wonderful experience, and yeah, like Don Noble has been really awesome, and then Zeb Carter, and Kevin Candela. I may be mispronouncing his name. I apologize. But all those guys have been like super helpful and encouraging. And like I met Bertie Walker at a convention last year in Florida, and she introduced me to Riot Forge and like told me all about it. And then that's also how I met Alex Johnson, who I've been very fortunate to work with, and I have stories in 2 of his anthologies, one of which is about to come out. It's called Cherry Nose Armageddon. It's a collection of clown horror, and like I'm really stoked about that. Like Ramsey Campbell is in it. It's amazing, and so yeah, those guys rock. Long live the Forge,
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a member of the Forge for quite some time. I haven't really taken full advantage, but I always use it as a resource, for information and to just network and stuff. It's a great thing to be a part of if you can get inside the inner circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it is a bit of an invite-only type of thing, though. I'm sure if you got the right credentials, it's super easy to get in.
right. Yeah, I thought that you did Scared Silly through them. But,
No, I did that like really completely on my own before I was really into the Forge. But no, I've taken. I mean, Don Noble, the guy's like a godfather to a lot of writers. He put up a series of instructional videos how to like do your own ebook formatting, which is completely invaluable. Plus, the Writers Forge, Riot Forge is not just writers. It's a collective of artists. It's a collective of editors, writers, and you can lean on each other. You're not going to get. You may get some free services, but you can definitely get discount services through the Forge, and everybody kind of works together. And it could be a one hand washes the other thing. I'll edit your book, you edit my book. Everybody works together. It is a very a tight community and a collaborative effort there, and it's when you publish under Riot Forge, you maintain all your rights and everything. It's just like waving a banner for the collective, but everything is yours when you publish under Riot Forge. It's a pretty unique publishing experience as far as I can tell.
Right, definitely.
Yeah, but Scared Silly that was not under Riot Forge. I may do something under their banner yet, but nothing imminent.
Cool.
So, what you got? Joy coming out. Have you gotten much early response back on it?
I don't know. I haven't like looked at the page. I just saw that 2 people bought a Kindle copy of it. I was really, really excited about that. So I can't wait to get some feedback. Like no one's really read it like professionally or like officially. A couple of friends when I worked at the warehouse read through it, and like they didn't really seem to get it. In fact, one of my friends was like, "I just can't read this," and so they thought it didn't make any sense, which to me was a compliment. But like I I don't know. I'm looking forward to getting some feedback, good or bad, and I really want to grow as a writer, and so I think that would be helpful.
Well, here's an interesting question. You say you started writing that about 2011, roughly? Is that fair?
No, well, I started the script in 2011,
Yeah.
and then in 2012, there was like a span of a few months, and then I started it in earnest as a book in the late fall of 2012. Because when it really got kicked off was this one day I played hooky from work, and I went to the park, and it was like 6 a.m. and I had my coffee and my notebook, and I just sat there writing, and like I you know I had a like good long writing session that day, and that's when it like really started. So yes, it's 2012, late 2012.
So there's a big chunk of at least time spent before you even knew what Bizarro was. So my question would be to you, how much influence did Bizarro wind up having on that book?
I think quite a bit. I did have the interesting experience when I first read Bizarro. I thought, wow, this is very similar to what I've been doing, And as other people have stated on your program, I was unaware that there was a genre called Bizarro, and like I was calling what I was doing. I was like, I'm a surrealist horror writer. And I always thought it'd be cool to have stories that were like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as directed by or interpreted by David Lynch, And but I would say, yeah, after I started reading Bizarro, especially after I read Ape Shit, I would say definitely there is a noticeable influence, which I'm totally cool with. Like I mean, it's good to be as, it's, you don't want to, I think all of us strive to have our own individual voices. You don't want to like rip anyone off, but, I'm also like proud to have my influences on my sleeve.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I'm always hesitant to ask the question, like, who are your influence or who is this book influenced by? Because it's like you said, your work should be your own. It, stuff can bleed in, but I always hated those, like when bands would promote themselves. They're like, oh, we're a cross between Metallica and Iron Maiden, because like that sounds like the cool thing to like, promote yourself. But like, don't be Metallica or Iron Maiden, be yourself. And that like bled over into writing for me is like, there's tons of people. I've read so much, and there's tons of influence on my writing, but I just try to be Frank Edler, when I write, and not mash up styles, not be coherent about I'm going to write this, real Kevin Strange like work. Nothing like that. Like I just try to write what I write. But those influences, if you're a reader and you're reading constantly, it's going to come from everywhere like that. So I agree with you to just be the best Russell Holbrook writer you can be.
Absolutely.
So some other hack can say like, oh, I write a Russell Holbrook mashup. Let that guy say it. You just be the Russell Holbrook.
Right on.
And Russell Holbrook, I hate to say it, but we're out of time.
Oh.
I know. Sad. But we need you to write more books and keep promoting that Bizarro down there in Georgia and putting it up on the billboard in big giant lights like a Dirk Diggler sign. You know what I'm saying? Just get the explosions and the neon and really just wave the flag hard down there in Georgia for everybody in Bizarro, because we all love you, and thank you for being the super fan and super writer now that you are.
Oh, thank you, Frank. I will do my best.
That's fantastic. And thank you once again for coming and talking to us on Bizzong, Mr. Russell Holbrook.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you.
That's it. And there you have it. Russell Holbrook, one of the super fans of Bizarro, now stepping into the spotlight with his book, Joy. case you didn't know, in case you're interested, the band that Russell was talking about being in and having some minor success is called Joe Christmas, and you can find their music on Spotify. Speaking of super fans and places to find where Russell's putting up those fantastic pictures of the sign outside the shop, and he's even got pictures of the bookshelves inside the book house. You should check out on Facebook. There's 2 groups that are quintessential if you're a fan of Bizarro. The first one is called Bizarro Fiction, and the other one is called Bizarro Fans. Those 2 groups will feature anything you need to know about that's been coming out title-wise in Bizarro, any kind of cool projects, and just a lot of cool fun, like Russell's doing, sharing his pictures of the book house down there in Georgia. So those are definite must-see if you're not already part of those 2 groups. Bizarro Fans, Bizarro Fiction. Search them on Facebook. And while you're on Facebook searching things, if you're not already a fan of the Bizzong podcast page, check us out over there as well. Just search Bizzong or Bizzong Podcast on Facebook. You'll find us. Join the group. You're going to get, it's the first place I announce new releases of the podcast. And we throw in some additional stuff over there. Kevin Strange, just this past Friday, he ran, Free Stranger Day. He had every single Kevin Strange book was free on Amazon on Friday. And unless you were following us or following Kevin Strange on Facebook, you didn't know about it. You missed out on a ton of great free Bizarro fiction. So be sure to join all of those groups on Facebook. And don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter as well at Bizzong Podcast on Twitter. So, Zongers, until next week, you are free to listen to these great Project iRadio podcasts.
Hi, this is Brian Keene. I'm an international best-selling, award-winning horror novelist and comic book writer.
No comment!
Sir, what about the ending to The Rising?
Motherfucker!
My stories have been turned into movies. I've even spoken inside CIA headquarters.
Fucking no comment, don't you understand?
I've worked in this industry for 20 years and I know everybody. More importantly, I know where the bodies are buried. And now I'm telling you their location every week on the horror show.
You understand this?
Plus, we discuss the latest news in horror novels, movies, comics, and games, and interview the biggest names in the business.
This interview is over. No comment!
Join us on the horror show Thursday nights at 7 p.m. only on Project iRadio.
Brian Keene was also unavailable for comment.
Do you like things scary? Do you like things loud? Dare to open the pages of the Necrocasticon. Each week we take heavy metal and horror properties and blend them together. The Necrocasticon. Thursday, exclusively on Project iRadio.